Hello, welcome to another Burgundy with Tweedy video. I thought I'd come down to my cellar for a change. Any of you in the UK will know it's been pretty cold these last few days. Well, if I get this video out in a timely fashion, might be old news by the time this gets published. It's dark really early. It's just been very difficult to get outside. Even the prospect of sitting in my back garden this evening and being a bit of a wimp doesn't seem that appealing. I have, however, this week taken delivery of some wines from a new to me wine merchant who I have not used before. They're called Robert Rolls, and they are based in the City of London, actually. I don't think there are that many wine merchants based in the City of London, lots in other bits of London. It was a mixed case. I've gone through everything they have from the Cotes Nuits, pretty much, and just picked the stuff that was in a sort of reasonable-ish price range. Did order 6 bottles, one of them turned out to not be available, so it ended up being 5. Anyway, too much babble. I tried to put a light behind me for a change. Is there any chance this label's going to be visible? This caught my eye partly because it is a Bourgogne Hautes Nuits appellation that I often feature on this channel, and it's from Gavignet. But it's the other Gavignet. The Gavignet, the producer that I often feature on this channel, is Philippe Gavignet, whereas this is Alain Maurice Gavignet. I assume there is some family connection there. Burgundy is a bit, incestuous or something. Everybody seems to be related to everybody else there. So I'm sure there is some family connection, either close or distant. I don't exactly know the specifics. Even more interestingly, the overall appellation is Bourgogne Hautes Nuits, but the specific vineyard is Les Dames Huguette, which is a specific vineyard that the other Gavignet, Philippe Gavignet, also produces wine from. And I've not too long ago had the 2020 vintage of this from Philippe Gavignet, which I thought was good. I like almost all of his wines. So it will be really interesting to compare. Did I get the name of that vineyard right? I mean, can you see? I can't see what's... Perhaps I angle it like that. How visible is that label? Is that going to make a good thumbnail? I've got a bit of a red face, haven't I, today? It's this funny weather, I think. Right, too much babble. Let me open this up, see what it is like. Did I say it's a 2020 vintage? A little bit restricted for space. My cellar, especially with this box getting in the way. Using a slightly larger than usual wine glass for change. It looks all misty in this light. I promise you it is clean. Usual caveat that the cellar is never a great place for nosing wine because it's so dank and musty in here. But before even the first swill, I'm getting a nice berry fruit nose here. There might even be a bit of blueberry in there, possibly blackberries, raspberries. Interesting mixture of sort of red and black fruits. I won't comment on the colour. One day I'll do a wine tasting in normal lighting conditions and I'll be able to talk about the colour. That is quite a nice start. Nice red and black fruit, really quite, before even giving it a swirl around, see how it changes with a swirl. Well, that's interesting. It actually goes more vinous with a swirl. Look, very pure, very fresh, very nice fruit character before the swirl. Now I'm getting something a little bit more sort of boozy and winey, not so fresh fruit. That's interesting. I would have expected that to be the other way round somehow. One thing to note is, this has just arrived today. The van from LBC, is it the London Bond Company, whatever it's called, was really cold. Partly it might just be the cold weather, perhaps it just reflects the fact it's basically freezing outside, about 0 or 1 degrees C. So the bottle was already cold, and my cellar is likely to be reasonably cold, I imagine. It actually doesn't feel freezing down here. Hopefully this maintains a somewhat stable temperature. So anyway, long story short, the wine is relatively cold, so the initial perception I'm getting from the palate is, I don't want to say austere because that always sounds bad, but it's not giving me the kind of sense of fruit that first whiff from the nose was. It's a lot more dry, a lot more savoury, actually a bit more mineral as well. It's also perhaps a little lighter than I would have expected from that nose and what I can perceive from the colour in this terrible lighting. But then Bourgogne Hautes Nuits wines are often slightly on the lighter side. Does have that extra altitude and so on, but there is a sort of elegance to that I quite like. Nice balance there. There is a touch of acidity. Whatever sugar there is very much being kept in check. Overall quite dry. There is some fruit character there. It's a little bit subdued, perhaps by the serving temperature. Interesting, wine of two halves there. seemed like it was going to be very fruity to begin with, and then went quite sort of restrained and dry, but not in an unpleasant way, actually. I would have to go and consult my notes again for the other Gavignet 2020 Clos des Dames Huguette, because I think I remember that being a little bit fuller and a little bit juicier, a little bit fruitier on the palate. Right, I paused for a moment to quickly skim through my notes, my video of the Philippe Gavignet version of almost exactly the same wine, same vintage, same vineyard, and so on and so on. I think it's the same vineyard. That's called Clos des Dames Huguette, and this is just Les Dames Huguette. But Clos normally means a walled vineyard, doesn't it? But if they're not exactly the same, they're almost certainly going to be next door to each other. I think I said with that actually as well that the fruit expression was a little bit absent compared to some of those other Gavignet wines. Whereas this, I think the only reason that I was initially getting a little bit less fruit on the palate was probably down to serving temperature. Just given the heat of my hand and letting this air for a little bit, I am starting to find more fruit character on the palate, and it is very appealing. It's like that first nose was. And I guess that's coming back actually now in the post-swilling subsequent nosing as well. Nice mixture of raspberry, blackberry, I think that kind of fruit character, plus a bit of blueberry, red and black fruits, and really quite appealing actually. And it has a really lovely weight and a nice mouthfeel, quite smooth, quite silky, a little bit on the light side, but I don't mind that. I don't mind those slightly lighter styles, especially as it's married with dark fruit notes. So interesting to have a slightly lighter in terms of weight and body style of wine, where the fruit character is slightly sort of darker and richer and heavier. I think that's good. I'm pretty happy with that. Difficult to say straight away whether I think this has stylistically some similarity with that other wine. It actually feels a little bit different. Presumably that's down to differences in winemaking style, stuff happening in the winery rather than in the vineyard. Could even be viticulture differences in the vineyard. Perhaps those two little plots, each of those different factions of the Gavignet clan are managed differently, who knows. But that is actually pretty nice. Definitely enjoying that. Yeah, good stuff. I feel like I've probably babbled too much, but dark fruit, light, a little bit savoury, but the fruit character comes later. Serving temperature important, as always. Overall, though, really pleasant weight, really quite drinkable. And a good price as well. I'll put that on screen, with the usual caveats of by Burgundy standards and so on. But yeah, pretty happy with that. Cheers.